Now that you have reviewed your year so far, because you did do that right at the beginning of July, now you have very probably come across some things that did not turn out as planned. I'm sorry. If you did, do you feel horrible about it? Do you feel crushed? How do you handle it when things don't turn out as planned? This week, I'm going to share one of my own recent stories about things not going as planned. And it's a story that's been unfolding for the last 3 years. I haven't updated you about it in a while. So it's something big that didn't work out. And I'm going to then talk about how you can make shifts after something big doesn't work out in your business. Welcome to Explore Your Enthusiasm with me, Tara Swiger. This is episode 216, and you can find a free worksheet that helps you apply this week's podcast episode to your own business. You can find it at taraswiger.com/podcast 216. You're also going to find the full transcript of this podcast right there in the blog post. And if you're listening to the audio version of this podcast, you very likely can see the full transcript in your audio description. So as you're listening, I know on the podcast app on an iPhone, you scroll down and it should have the whole transcript there. We're changing things up. You no longer need to give me your email address to get the full transcript. I'm putting it right in the blog post. And we're shifting it so that you can have easy access to any of the resources I mentioned. It's all in the blog post. And each week's episode will come with a free worksheet or resource guide that you can sign up for in that podcast episode. I'd love to know if you like this better, if it's easier for you to be able to read it either in your app or if you go to the blog at taraswiger.com/podcast 216. If this makes any difference to you, tell me. Let me know on Instagram. I'm at taraswiger. Leaving me a direct message or just adding me there or commenting on my most recent post is the easiest way for me to see it as quickly as possible. Or you can leave a review on iTunes, whatever star rating review you think this podcast deserves, let us know there. And if you're watching on YouTube, like this video and leave me a comment below it. Tell me if this makes any difference to you and how you get over being disappointed when things don't go well in your business. So disappointments. They happen. I've heard from many of you that you actually skip your monthly and quarterly review because you know you didn't hit your goal and you don't want to acknowledge it. And I feel you. It sucks to acknowledge that you didn't hit a goal that you set. But here's the thing. You have to acknowledge where you are in order to move forward. You have to be oriented in where you're at before you can create a map for where you want to go next. So I lead all new Starship captains through Chart Your Stars before we make a plan or take classes or anything, because getting oriented in where you are and what matters most to you and where you want to go, that is the most important step. Knowing where you are lets you make a plan so you can go forward. In the spirit of acknowledging that goals don't come true all the time, that you have disappointments, and that it's really hard to own up, admit, look at, talk about those disappointments. I'm going to share a story from my own life that's been unfolding over these last 3 years. So as many of you longtime listeners know, 3 years ago, Jay quit his office job to work part-time in my business and part-time at the local comic book shop. We intended to buy the local comic book shop that he was working in, and that kind of came about really in the first couple weeks that he worked there. He found out the owner wanted to sell it. We wanted to buy it. It was like, yes, this is perfect. So he worked there in exchange for equity in the business, for money off the purchasing price. He worked there for free. We're both super excited about this. And I'm just going to tell you, my business ego was super proud because this meant that my business went from being about 70% of our income to being 100% of our family income. I think this is especially meaningful to me because so many people still today assume that my husband has been supporting me financially throughout my business. And here's the thing. He has been supporting me emotionally. He has been supporting me physically, like with his physical presence, doing things in my life that I don't want to do or that we share the responsibility of doing. But my biz income has always been, since I quit my day job back in 2009, my biz income has always been 60% or more of our annual income. And I admit this like ego of my business is my own thing I need to work on. I need to not care what people think and the stupid assumptions they make. I'm the first to tell you, like, that does not matter. I should not care. It should not mean so much that they assume that, like, I'm not paying for things. That doesn't matter. But it felt really good. I'm just being honest. It felt really good to answer the question, and what does your husband do? Which always follows the I'm self-employed and I work for myself with, what does your husband do? It felt really good to answer that question with the, well, he works in my business. And he was excited because, hello, this allowed him to learn the comic shop business while getting to know the people that were going to be his customers. When he was working the shop he's going to take over, these are the people that would be our customers, and build relationships with them and become a part of the community. He loved that. But after 2.5 years of us working on this, it didn't work out. The owner didn't give us what we needed for the banks when we needed it. And it became clear to me that he really wasn't ready to sell the business. The fact that getting paperwork just signed took so long, months. And after 6 months of intense, like, waiting, intense expecting it to happen any minute, it became official that we're not going to be buying the shop. This was like September 2017, to give you an idea of the timeline. He had started working there in April of 2015. April of 2015. So that was a huge disappointment. I mean, that's just a huge disappointment for Jay. He needed to take time to grieve that his dream, as we had planned, did not work out. And it really helped that we knew we did everything possible. And by the end of the process, we just wanted it to be done. We just wanted an answer. We just wanted finality. And that coming to a close in September of 2017 actually totally changed our lives, because Jay stopped working 6 days a week, 5 to 6 hours a day at the comic book shop, and he was suddenly home all the time. Now, when I tell other people with long-term partners this, they're like, oh my gosh, how did you handle it? So we decided that he should wait a minute before getting another job or taking another path, because he needed time to grieve, and he also needed time to figure out, like, what is he doing? Like, what does he want to do? How could we move forward towards the goal that we still had to open a comic book shop, or to own a comic book shop without buying this one? And also, he could do more in my business. He could travel with me. We'd have such a freer life if he wasn't being held down. And let me tell you, this was my dream. My dream is that we're not tied down. We can do whatever. We can travel. We're here when we want to be here. Like, we can spend time together. I love him. I love spending time with him. He loves talking to me, which we'll get to in a minute. And, like, this is just, like, dreamy, right? And it's going to give him a chance to think about how we could still reach the dream of owning a shop, but without buying this shop. And we'd already been living off my income for the last 2.5 years, so nothing there changed. It kind of freaked me out, like, for him not to go. I went through a period of, like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? And then I realized, like, nothing had changed, but it was still that idea that you go to a job, even if they're not paying you, it still feels like you're going and doing something and contributing. And I went through a little, like, what's going to happen? But the fact was, nothing in our finances changed. My business was still the same, and that I've been paying 100% of the bills, so that was fine. And we did have a really good time. So he went to San Francisco with me in October when I taught at Creative Live. I taught the YouTube for Makers and Podcasting for Crafters classes, which you should totally listen to or watch those classes on Creative Live. But then we spent a week with my parents in Oregon, and we had a great holiday season. So that's like October that we traveled to San Francisco and Oregon. And then we had the Thanksgiving holidays, traveling to see family, the Christmas holidays and New Year's. And it was great because we didn't have the stress of juggling schedules, right? We can just go when we wanted to go. All of our parents require at least a road trip to visit, so now we could actually do that easily. But when it came to the day-to-day work time, I'm going to be totally honest with you, it was really, really hard. I need either total silence or coffee shop white noise. And what's funny is, as I was writing this podcast episode, a guy I really don't like, who comes to the coffee shop all the time, came in and started talking loudly and started playing his own Instagram videos loudly for someone else who was at the shop. Like he was like, oh, watch this video and see what I say. And he started playing it loudly. And there's like no getting away from him and his loud voice and him playing his videos without earbuds. It's super rude. So I couldn't work. I had to come home. And that's the kind of silence I need, like, or the kind of white noise that I can just tune out. But Jay is like a very chatty person. And he is so loving. And he took such good care of me and our home and our pets during those months. It was awesome. But it felt like I was always balancing my work with spending time with my family, which of course you're always balancing, but when you could literally spend 24/7 with your family, it kind of melted the boundaries I'd had around my work. Because the boundaries I'd had around my work, my whole working life, my whole business life, since I started my first business in 2006, it has been like the hours that he's gone at work, at a job, at working at the comic book shop are the hours that I work. And so that was really hard when he worked second shift back in 2008. But when he didn't leave at assigned times, all of the boundaries of my work just kind of melted away. Completely my fault. My daily routines really just slid into oblivion. And here's the thing. Even if Jay said nothing to me all day, it just felt different with him here. And me and my friend Liz have talked about how it's different when your partner is just in the house. Even if they don't speak to you, they're just there. And that feels different than when they're not there, especially if you're an introvert. If you're an extrovert, you might be like, I have no idea what you're talking about. It doesn't feel different to me at all. That's what Jay always says. Like, with being with me is like being alone. He doesn't feel different to have me here or not here, which is sweet, but not how I work. So we didn't really get a lot of time to get used to that weirdness because in February, a friend with a sick kid asked Jay if he could help out in his shop. So he had a business. He asked Jay to help out in the shop, and Jay totally stepped in. And at first just a little, and then a lot, and then daily. And I've mentioned this several times on my podcast, Essential Enthusiasm, which if you're not listening to that, you should go listen to that. It's my book conversation podcast with Jolie of Jolie Creates Essential Enthusiasm. We've talked about it a couple times when your partner is an obliger. And Jay is an obliger. And around April, after months of bouncing between working in my business, very part-time, helping his friend out, he told me, I feel like I'm constantly doing what other people are obliging me to do and not what I need or want to be doing to move forward on my own goals. And I know when I say that you obligers feel me on that. You tell me that's how you feel too. So what he wanted to feel like was that he's moving the future comic book shop closer to us. And the biggest thing that would help with that is money, right? Like having money in savings means we need less of a loan. It means we can start up when we want to start up. It means we have, the more money we have in savings to start the comic book shop, the sooner it's going to happen. So although he can support me in tangible ways that lead to my business growing, Jay can't directly do the things that earn money in my business. No one can. And this is the thing I've had to come to realize, is I get a lot of help. I hire people to do things like edit videos and to put together my podcast posts, to put all my information in an email that gets sent out. But what that does is free up my time to do the things that actually make money. So those things in and of themselves aren't profitable, but what I do with the time that I'm not doing that is profitable. For Jay to feel like he's working on his dream, he needs to see the direct result. It can't be like, oh, I'm freeing up this so you can do that, and then that's growing. He wanted to see the direct result. And here's another factor. I'm going to be totally honest with you, okay? I was having some not great mental health months in April, March to June-ish. So one of the lies that my anxiety tells me is that I will never feel like myself again. And that in not feeling like myself, my whole business will fall apart. And when my business is 100% of our income, the fear that my business will fall apart is really also then a fear that my life will fall apart. Our whole life, everything will just fall apart. Our dreams will be farther away. We'll fall farther into debt. We'll never pay off our freaking student loan debts. We'll lose our car. We'll get kicked out of our house, right? That's what my anxiety goes down. And I would not say at any point that I felt pressured. I loved, and my biz ego loved, that my business was supporting us. But when it came time to think about growth and expanding, you can never think about growth and new goals when you're in a period of anxiety, depression, when you're low. I'm just going to tell you, you have no creativity when you're low. There are all these studies that show that when you're not feeling well, your creativity and your ability to see possibility is reduced. So I felt a kind of existential dread that and that dread took away all my creativity and all my ability to think about how the business would grow, how we would put more into savings. Like, what is this all going towards? I didn't know, and I felt stressed and couldn't identify it. Plus, there was someone in my house all the time. And I couldn't see the amazing ways to grow or improve my business because I was just totally surrounded by a fog of, OMG, what if it all fails? Ah! So, Jay said, I feel obligated by what everybody else wants me to do and not like I'm working on moving my own goal forward. So I'm going to go get a job. And that will allow me to contribute directly to our family's dreams. And maybe it will help you not feel this existential dread about where your business is and where it's going. It will just give you some time to think about what it is that you want again, because I was getting further and further away from that. And this part is a huge factor in him deciding to get a job, but I'm going to tell you, it's going to make no sense to our international listeners. And that is healthcare is totally a deciding factor. So we had healthcare that, we bought individually, that we paid around $350 a month for. And it was not going to pay for anything until we had spent $5,000 on medical care. So that's called our deductible. We'd spend $350 each month, and then we'd have to pay entirely out of pocket for every health visit we had. So for example, when Jay went because he had strep throat, it cost $350 for that visit for them to do a strep test. None of that covered by insurance, no copays, directly out of our pocket. And in this job that he got, he went back to the day job he had before. He walked in, they were like, yes, we want to hire you back. Come to an interview later this week. And he had the job by the end of the week. It was kind of crazy. And he started working the next week. So in this job, the health insurance is covered for him completely, but he pays about a quarter of his monthly income for my insurance, which we decided to go towards instead of what we had because it has a lower deductible, which means we have to spend less out of pocket. And we just have $20 copays at doctors. So it means if we get a physical or a checkup, it's just $20 instead of the $300. And I realize for most people that getting a job that has insurance that pays pretty well for our area for a person who has a BA in history, that is only good news. It is such a blessing. The fact that he was able to get a job so quickly is like, oh my gosh, it's amazing. But I'm just going to admit to you guys that my biz ego was kind of disappointed because this is not the direction that I thought we were moving in. This is not the goal on the plan for him to work at this job that he worked at before, even though he's good at it, even though it's something he cares about. He's a caseworker for mentally disabled adults, and he goes and he visits them and checks up on them and then also makes plans for their care and then makes sure that people are giving them that care. He's great at it. He loves it. He's like, it's perfect for him. But I didn't think he was going to have to do that. I thought we're both going to never have traditional employment again. We were going to own a retail shop, man. We were going to have a shop where people come, and I had an office in the back. And yet, I have to admit, it's been totally great. In just the 2 weeks he's been working, since I record this podcast, it's been about 2 weeks. I have gotten so much done. I am alone for 8 hours of the day, which is just super restorative. And even though his job won't really be contributing to our bills, it's going to go towards paying off debt and saving for the future. It loosened something in my head. It relaxed some existential dread. And I have been able to be so much more creative in thinking about the next direction of my business. And I have had so much clarity in the last 2 weeks. It's just totally unbelievable and totally amazing. And angels should sing hallelujah. It feels so good. So that is the tale of us not reaching goals and things not going as planned. And I wanted to share that with you because I think it's our natural human tendency to assume that everyone else is just like where they want to be. Things are going as planned because it looks good, right? Like we're happy, we're healthy, we can pay our bills. So it just seems like, well, then that must be as planned. Or just assume that things came easily to them and that the goals they set, then they reached, right? Or that if they've hit one big goal, like having a 6-figure business, that everything else just comes easily and they reach all their other goals and it all. And to be honest, I thought my life would be like that. I thought if I can figure out this business thing and pay our bills with our business, then like everything else is going to be easy. Like I'll be able to have kids. Jay will like work from home and help with the kids. Like I'll give birth naturally and breastfeed and it will all be beautiful. And yet everything will continue apace as planned. We'll buy a comic book shop. He'll work there. Everything will be beautiful if I just figure out this thing in my business. And like, that's not how it works. And those of you who are more mature than I am, like emotionally, realize, Tara, that's ridiculous. Of course it doesn't work out like that. Me and my friends in our 20s used to talk about how sometimes it was tempting to have kids before we figured out our careers, because if we had kids, then our life would be figured out. That's obviously ridiculous. And the friends who did have kids back then, they still don't have their lives figured out. But it seems like because they reached that goal, they just don't have any other goals to worry about. So I want to talk about that because that's just not true. And I also want to talk about it because a lot of people dream of quitting their day job and never going back, or even retiring their spouse as like a next step. For many of you who work in your creative business and you absolutely love it, you might think a next step is letting your spouse not have to work in a job they hate. But I just want to be honest with you. It's not always fun. It's not always easy. And sometimes it's not fulfilling for both people. And this feels almost risky to talk about because I don't want you to think that Jay's unhappy. I don't want you to think that like that we're unfulfilled, but there are things that we thought we wanted that ends up it's not what we wanted. So life changes and what you want changes. Your mission in your business isn't to hit a certain milestone. It's to create a life that you like day in and day out. I deeply believe that most of the time, your business should be helping you create a business or a life that you actually enjoy being in. And sure, there are times of struggle, and there are times of pushing through, and there are times of grinding it out, and there are launches, and there are many thin, slim years. And yet, if you don't like it while you're doing it, there's really no point. So maybe there's a business that supports the life that you want, or maybe not. Either way is fine. As I was writing about this, I was reminded of something my brother said to me years ago. So my brother's 3 years younger than me. He works at a tech startup in San Diego. And back when my business was making about $40,000 a year, he was making about $60,000, $70,000 a year. And he said, we were talking about, I think this was years ago. So this was like Jay not liking his job. We're talking about liking your job and how I felt like I was so blessed and I needed to stick it out doing what I do because I love what I do, even if it like meant financial stress. And he said, I don't know why you guys are so hung up on the idea that you have to like what you do with your work time. Because you know you could just get a job that paid you well enough for you to do the stuff you actually like in your non-work time. He's like, that's what I'm doing. It's not that I love my job. It's that my job pays for me to love and have plenty of like time and money to do what I want to do on nights and weekends. And at first I thought, ugh, no, ew, that sounds horrible. But then I realized that in our online business world, and especially in a lot of the blogs and Instagram accounts I was listening to back then, they've romanticized loving what you're doing every minute and you'll never feel like you're working, and that is the goal. But here's the thing. Even in a business you love, you're going to do things you don't like. And as you build the dream life that you want and the dream business that will support that life, you're going to do a lot of things you don't like. And you're going to work hard. You're going to get rejected a a lot, and you may need to do other work to pay the bills or to finance your art. There's nothing wrong with that. And by the way, I reminded my little brother that I didn't get a BA in computer science like he did. Mine is in French Lit. So our employabilities are like a little different. I'm pretty much unemployable. And spending time grinding away and making not much was a long-term investment into the business that I have today that allows me to that pays me well to do the things that I am passionate about doing. And I would have rather had those years of grinding it out and things being really, really slim and tight in order to build the thing I've built that I get to have today. But the big realization is that that's not for everyone in every situation. Obviously, if you have dependents who are relying on you to bring home the bacon, you can't decide, well, I'll just be really broke and live on ramen for a couple years. We didn't really live on ramen. We lived on spaghetti, like homemade from canned tomatoes and cheap spaghetti noodles, like 3 nights a week. So that's not the right decision for everyone in every situation. The decisions I made were based on where I was in that point in my life. I knew that while I didn't have children and while we didn't mind being broke, that I could build something that later would provide for me. So, to sum up, when things don't go as planned, there's a couple things for you to remember. A, acknowledge what isn't going the way you wanted. It helps you get oriented in where you are now. So acknowledge when things didn't work out. Acknowledge when you didn't reach a goal. Acknowledge, like I just about 4 weeks ago realized, oh, I'm disappointed. Like I thought we were going in this direction, not getting off this trajectory of no more day jobs. And now that's not where we are as a couple. And like, I'm disappointed. For a while I wanted to not look at it and be like, but it's great, it's fine, it's no problem. But like, no, acknowledge that I'm disappointed and this is where we are right now because of where we want to go next. But you have to start every plan from where you really truly are, not where you wish you were. So acknowledge that things haven't gone as planned and that you're disappointed. Feel the feelings so that they can move past you. If you keep ignoring those feelings, they're going to stick around way longer. Feel the feelings, let them move on. And also, number 2, no, you are not alone. I told you this whole story, which is probably way more than I would ever tell you about my life and my marriage, because I wanted you to know that it's not supposed to be different than how it is. It's not easy. It's not always going to turn out the way that you wanted, no matter how hard you work at it. And the thing that I notice a lot in myself and in others is it's easy to think, I should already be past this, or this should be easier, or I should not be having these struggles. And as long as you think that, like this should be different, it's really hard for you to accept where you are and move on from it. Because you're so stuck in like fighting what is, accept what is, and ask yourself where you want to go next. The third thing is take time to grieve and flop about. That's what we call it, flopping about, where you just don't know. And everything is confusing and you're not sure what to do next. And maybe everything's horrible and you do some things you don't want to do. Like volunteer in somebody's business when you shouldn't. Like just flop about. It's okay. Don't hurt the people who you love. Don't make super bad, not changeable life decisions, but like flop about for a while. Try things, experiment, see if they work for you, see if they don't work for you. The fourth thing is to notice when things aren't working for you. Be really honest with yourself. Even if you've reached a dream or a goal that you thought was going to be one way and it's not working for you, acknowledge it. Like Jay did when he came to tell me, like, I don't want to feel obligated and I also want to feel like I'm making a direct impact. No, you can always make a different choice. You are not stuck where you are now. You can always choose to want something different. You can choose to do something different. You can choose to quit your business and get a job. You can choose to quit your job and have your business exactly where you are if you want to live on what you're making right now. So sometimes that choice might look like something you didn't think you'd do. We didn't think Jay was going to go back to work in that way, but it was the right decision. So we had to shift what we thought it was going to look like. That's okay. Just do the next right thing for you and your family and your situation and for what you really want. Sometimes what feels like going backwards is actually moving forward. So my friend Javi explained it it was Kim Worker in a blog post when she quit as an editor of a crochet magazine, Interweave Crochet. She talked about it being a spiral. It feels like you're coming back around to the same place, but every time you've grown and things are changed and you're actually spiraling to new things, not spiraling down, spiraling up and out, going back to the same job, but being in a different place financially, emotionally, with a goal that you want. Also, he's able to just not stress a job in the same way that he did before. You're always in a different place, even if it feels like you're doing the same thing, because you've grown, you've changed, you've moved down the path, even if you're going back to some of the same things. The fifth thing is that if something you dreamed of just isn't working for you, that's okay. You're allowed to change your mind. So number 4 was like, notice when it's not working. Number 5 is like, accept that it's okay, that it's going to happen. Like, you're not going to know if a goal is for you until you meet it. You're not going to know if having a VA or someone help you in your business or an assistant is for you unless you try it. You're not going to know if making a certain amount of money and the ways that you need to scale up in order to do that is for you unless you start scaling up. So many of us stop ourselves from going for goals because we think, well, I don't know, maybe that'll be too hard. Maybe I won't like it. Maybe it won't have what I want. Keep changing your dreams as you change. It's okay if they change. You have to go for it, try it, work on it to figure out if it's right for you. I talked about this last week in the goals and systems. So I thought having my business employ both of us and having Jay all around all the time would be amazing, and I was wrong. Do not mistake this as I don't like to be with him. It's just I don't like to be with anyone 24/7. So you need to keep changing your dreams as you change. And number 6 is like, don't give up. Don't give up. All of this is just details. Identify the big thing you care most about, the one thing that matters to you, and organize everything around that. Maybe that's being self-employed and not holding a real job. Organize all of your goals towards that. Maybe it's having more time with your family. If that's the case, organize your business around that. Organize your life around that principle. That might lead you to do things differently than someone whose goal is a certain standard of living, a certain amount of income each month to hit that standard of living. That's going to look slightly different than if your goal is to spend more time with your kids. As long as this is still what you want, that big thing is still the center of your universe, let go of all the details and focus on how to get that. The details are going to change. The path is going to change. The goals, the individual goals that get you there are going to change. Focus on the one thing, keep your eye on that, and keep remembering just because this trial, this last 3 years experiment didn't get us where we thought it would, we're still moving towards the big thing. So to help you set goals from this place, focused on what really matters, on what the big thing is for you, and help you realize that like it's all an experiment, even your goals, I'm sharing a worksheet this week called Creating Doable Goals. In it, it's going to help you focus on your mission and where you want to go so that you can set goals based on that. You'll find it at taraswiger.com/podcast216. If you're looking at the show notes on your podcast app, there should be a link to click to take you right to taraswiger.com/podcast216. If you are watching on YouTube, it's in the doobly-doo below. So when you're on that page, scroll down, put your email in the box at the bottom that says like, get the Create Doable Goals worksheet, and we'll send it right to your email. That's the only email you're going to get is that PDF and anything new and free I create about goal setting. So when you fill out the worksheet, so don't just like get the worksheet, fill it out. Print it out, fill it out on your iPad or on your phone. You can use those apps to fill them in. When you fill it out, tell me, share it on Instagram with the hashtag Explore Your Enthusiasm. Be sure you spell enthusiasm right. I always misspell it. And share it so that I can cheer you on and what your goal is and what you've adjusted. Tell me what you've changed or where you've been disappointed and how you're reassessing. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for sharing your disappointments and your joy with me, and have an enthusiastic, lovely day.